Dave, you're back.
True, I'm here.
You
Dad.
are here.
Your dad.
Be here now.
Be here in the moment. Buddha said, that's how we got his now.
Okay, so welcome back to the show, everybody. Another special edition with the man, Dave.
Dave the Grave.
Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm not even going to do an intro on this one. I'm going to do the intro right now. The intro is welcome. Thanks for being here. If you're listening to this, this is the free 45-minute version, but this will also be the full version on the Patreon. So thanks for tuning into the free 45, but if you want the full version of this podcast, you got to jump on the Patreon. You guys know the drill. Link is down below in the show notes, or you can sub here on YouTube to get the full version. Today, we're going to be talking about, we don't really know. We're just going to run with it.
Going to ramble on about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yes. So I wanted to say that you're responsible for this whole podcast.
How so?
This is like 108th episode. You know that?
No, I didn't know that.
I have 108 episodes.
I had no idea. How did I get responsible?
Because do you remember when you lived at the Nanoose Bay? Right?
Rumming Road.
Yeah, Rumming Road. Okay, so when you lived at Rumming Road in Nanoose Bay, we recorded the first ever podcast. And it wasn't actually, we didn't even know it was going to be a podcast. We recorded in the backyard. Okay. And we were just recording the beginnings of your life and vintage. And the reason I started to record that with you, you don't remember that, right?
No.
Okay. So that was like 4 years ago. And the reason we started to record that was because we wanted to potentially maybe write a book.
Oh, which I still want to do, by the way. So I'm calling out that, by the way, to all you old guys. Remember, I started in 68. There were a bunch of us in the 70s, and it got really moving late 70s, 80s. So if there's any of you guys out there, get a hold of me, man.
To do what? Oh, to be in the book?
Yeah, to be in a book. I got to, I'm 78. I just turned 78. And, there's sometimes my memory is really good and sometimes it's,
Well, you don't remember 4 years ago I was recording that episode.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
So there you go.
So that was the beginning of it. And then
You've only been doing this for 4 years?
Maybe 4. I don't remember. How long have you been out of Rumming Road? Only 2.5 years. Right?
Yeah, almost 3 years now.
So that was the first episode, and then I thought, wow, this is just a cool podcast. Let's post it. That first episode is actually not on YouTube. The first episode is only on iTunes, but I'm going to post it because I want all you guys to hear and re-listen to the first ever episode, which is literally the roots of this whole show. Now we're on 108 episode. Wow. Which is crazy that I've done that many episodes, and I never intended in the first place to have a podcast. It just happened organically by recording you talking about your history.
My history. I think the history owns me more than I own the history. It's really crazy, man. I've been thinking about the rag business a lot lately. I got a really good friend, Scott Ravelson, and he owned the Pennsylvania company, and he did really, really well. And he got into new clothing as well as vintage clothing. He had a bunch of stores. And he did a lot of printing. And a buddy of mine, Ronnie Middleman, he had one of the first head shops. It was a hippie shop on the west side of New York City, and he started into a bunch of used clothing as well. Not a lot.
Let's keep on the Ravelson train. Let's talk. Why'd you bring him up?
Because he's still a buddy of mine from 1971, and we're really close.
How'd you meet him?
I met him. You'll never believe it. I had a company called The Rag Machine, and we were in Boston buying. I had a huge truck, and I always drove with one or two guys to help me with the buying. And someone told me there was a kid who went to the University of Boston, UBC, Boston U, and he had a room that he rented filled full of Levi jeans. And at that time, no one was doing vintage except the guys that were buying from me. And I found him. And there he was. He had 250 pair selling them for like 10, 12 bucks a pair. And we were both Tauruses. We didn't get along very well. So I walked into his room and I said, "What the fuck? You don't buy these from me. Where'd you get them?" He got them from a guy who used to work with me in Manchester, New Hampshire. I can't remember his name. He was a French-Canadian kid. And when I closed my store, the rag barrier in Manchester, to move to Pennsylvania and start the rag machine with my two partners, I gave him the rest of my blue jeans. And he sold them to Scott, and that's how Scott got them.
And Scott was selling them to kids at Boston U.
At University of Boston, yeah.
And you had beef with them.
And I had what?
You had beef with them?
Yeah, I walked in the store and I said, "Where the hell did you get these beans?" He said, "None of your half business."
You can swear on here, it's fine.
None of your fucking business. I said, "You better, it's my fucking business. I'm the guy who sells these jeans to everybody." He said, "Well, you didn't sell them to me." And we got into a big huff. And I said, and I looked right him in the eye and I said, "I'm going to bury you, you little shit." And he, from there, I think he just decided he was going to show me and stick it up my ass and became a great guy. And eventually we became really good friends. We started doing the boutique show, him in his booth and me in mine. And yeah, we became friends. To this day,
you fueled the whole business. His fire. You fueled the fire.
Fueled the fire.
His entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
He's like, "Fuck this guy. Who's this guy? Didn't tell me what to do.
He's not gonna tell
I
me
ain't
what
listen
to do."
this fucking guy.
That was so much fun. Scott Ravelson.
And so Scott Ravelson
company
is now in. Well, his whole life he's been in Cape Cod.
Cape Cod, and he went into real estate business. He started buying properties about 25 years ago.
More than that.
Maybe 30 years ago, and now he owns a ton of properties, and he's completely out of the rag business. Been out of the rag business for 20 years. He was partners with his brother Ed, who's a great guy also, and Ed married a girl named Patty, who was the #1 rep for Life is Good or Life is Precious.
Oh, the Life is Good kitschy shirts?
Yeah.
#1 ultimate dad brand. Life is Good.
And she was the #1 sales rep. And they met.
Yeah.
And he's been married to her for 35 years, probably. 30 years.
Stores on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Mixed of vintage and new, but probably mostly new now, right?
No. They don't have any stores left.
Oh, really?
And they were about 80% used. And they had a big store in Provincetown forever. Ed ran it till about 6-7 years ago.
So let's talk about real estate here, because some of your most successful friends
I went into real estate.
Did it through real estate, not through vintage.
That's right.
You never get rich from vintage alone. You have to take the money and invest it other places.
That's true, but I never did that.
Well, you had houses. You just always sold them.
Yeah, and
And you had buildings too.
Yeah, and I sold them, and I made money. Don't get me wrong. But I made little money.
You had ADD, and you couldn't sit still. You couldn't sit on your ass for a minute and wait.
Oh.
You always had to flip it and keep moving on and do some crazy shit.
You know that I was the first guy, by the way. I don't know if you know this. When the tweed overcoat thing was big, I was dealing in a lot of dealers in Europe. I was the first guy to bring the tweed overcoats in, and you'll never believe who bought them. You ready?
Your ADD even in the conversation. Do you
I wanted to just go off here.
Yeah, but
you know who bought them?
We probably already talked about that on an episode.
I don't think so.
I'd say so. But okay.
I sold them to Bloomingdale's. Can you believe it?
So let's continue. I want you to talk about your friends. I want to talk about Ravelson. I want to talk about who's your other buddy from Toronto who had Plum Loco.
Plum Loco.
Plum Loco. He was your partner in Toronto in the early days.
Larry
Horak.
Oh, he's doing great.
Yeah. So explain their method of how they did so
Larry did very well. He and I were partners for a long time. We had South Pacific. We were D&D Salvage for a little while. And Larry stayed in the clothing business. We started off as goods trading. We were in the jewelry business. And then a great friend of mine I met at Woodstock Ken Bray, who's still a really good friend of mine, he had a company called Sorcerer's Apprentice, and he sold us jewelry. Larry and I met. I don't know how we met, but we met and we became really good friends. He was the Canadian world champion hot air balloon rider.
They race, right?
Yeah, they race.
Yeah, they race.
And Judy and I, my wife, went to help him one year as part of his team. We were chasers. And then when we got back from that, we opened up Goods Trading. Then we started opening up the vintage clothing stores, and we ended up with like 8 or 9 of them called South Pacific. We did really
awesome.
well.
So explain though, because you always my whole life told me this concept.
Yeah.
To buy buildings, have stores in them.
Larry
So
did that.
explain this.
Larry did that. After Larry and I kind of separated, I stayed in Buffalo. He stayed in Toronto. And after we kind of finished with South Pacific, I hope a bunch of you remember South Pacific. It was really fun. He got back in the clothing business for a while, called Plum Loco. He's still in it. And he bought a lot of buildings. And most of the buildings he had his stores in, he bought. Like Drew. Drew bought his warehouse.
Yeah, I own the warehouse that we're currently in.
Yeah.
We own a building in Nanaimo, but we're not going to open a store there. We're going to rent it. But so the concept that he's talking about is 2 friends, Larry and Scott Ravelson.
Scott Ravelson.
If you're gonna open a store, which most people listening to this probably have, a lot of them have stores.
Both of them usually.
Yeah, so you're gonna pay rent anyway.
Right.
You're gonna pay rent. I'm paying exorbitant amount of rent in Vancouver. You can have a separate company that owns the property, pay rent to yourself, pay off the property mortgage, because you're paying it anyway.
Best thing to do.
And you can even make money on the other company. So you can inflate your own rent to now make money in your holding company because you'd be paying it anyway.
And it's a retirement
savings plan.
Yeah.
And then you do it again. And you do it again. And you keep buying the buildings. And now it's almost like a lot of you guys are probably in like LA, big cities, New York, even Vancouver. It's pretty unrealistic to be like you're going to go buy a store in Vancouver. It's very unrealistic.
Retired.
My store in Vancouver, the real estate alone is probably like
8 mil?
Yeah, 8 mil. No one's going to buy that. At least nobody I know.
Not someone in the vintage.
But also, like, talking about Larry, Plum Locos, he has Plum Locos in like Port Perry, Ontario.
Yeah. And
he went to towns where you can afford to buy a building. Who cares? You don't need to be in LA. You don't need to be in New York. Go to a town that you can actually afford, because those towns still need to shop clothes and understand vintage.
And he mixed it up. He did 50, 60% vintage, 40% new. And he made his own new clothing. Now, he bought some at some of the off-price shows. There's a show twice a year in Las Vegas called the Off-Price Clothing Show, where all the big companies like Roots and Gap and Banana Republic, they sell off their store returns, their end of the lines, stuff that they made that didn't go well. And Larry bought a lot of that for Plum Loco, so he really mixed it up really well. And
yeah,
I'm very proud of him. And he wasn't the only one that did that.
Well, a lot of people mix in the new.
Yeah.
Now I know friends that are doing it really well, but you got to be particular, because like it depends what the vibe of your store you want, right? In the store, in a place like Port Perry, you can put in like schleppy stuff.
You can put a lot of different stuff in.
And it doesn't matter because there's nothing available in that town.
That's right.
But if we tried to do like schleppy new in Vancouver,
you'd have trouble.
We'd have big trouble because there's 100 people doing it for cheaper or whatever.
And you had lots of competition.
And people don't want to come in and get like a fast fashion vibe.
And he didn't just do Port Perry. He did a half a dozen small towns.
Yeah, but all like Northern Ontario. Nice towns that have like decent little populations, but they were not downtown Toronto.
And they get good summer traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he did well, and he sold his buildings, and he still has 3 Plum Locos. And he doesn't do anything. Goes away all winter like he was down in the Bahamas with his wife, Corey. And
I don't know anybody who can say like they did it through their business alone. It's almost impossible to accumulate enough wealth through your business alone to retire or accumulate like real wealth. You have to take the money and do something else with it. It never happens from your business alone.
Well, that's not always true though. Some guys, a small percentage really hit it. As an example, these guys are doing really well with this stuff from the Gap.
But that's such a piss in the pot, considering like we're gonna now take that profit from that program and do something like buy another property,
right?
But it would never like you trying to nickel and dime and save your way to retirement won't happen through a normal salary.
And don't get ADD like me. I mean, every one of the companies I had could have retired me and my wife, and I just couldn't keep going.
Yeah, staying power is important.
Eco fiber, perfect example. I mean, 90s. I think we started in 94. No one was doing recycled yarn. We made recycled yarn. I got a patent on it. I got investment up the tootsie.
Okay, so you can't just jump into this topic without.
Oh, okay.
No, you can, but they're not going to understand what you're talking about. You have to give like the back talk of eco.
So eco fiber, I for the first time in my life didn't do well. I got really screwed up in the Army surplus thing for a little while, and my wife Judy, she had this great idea. She said, "Let's recycle old cotton," because all of the cotton yarn manufacturers had cotton waste, and they weren't using it; they were dumping it.
So the cotton waste specifically was clipping offcuts from production.
Right.
When you cut a T-shirt out of a flat piece of fabric, you have pieces that are too small to use and these little teeny offcut pieces. So it's new waste, not.
But it was also
waste.
Production waste. There's a certain amount of yarn production waste when they make new yarns, especially larger size yarns. We use some of that with recycled fabric and stuff, and we made a new yarn. And out of that yarn, we made T-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, and we started selling them. And then we made fabrics. We sold fabrics to some big companies. We did over $3 million our first year in 1995. Insane, man.
It was really good quality, and they were private labeling, so you could buy the shirts, put your own brand on it. Ecofiber also had its own like printed brand. They were like doing some cool, funky of their things of their own, but most of it was private label. The business bulk was private label,
That's right.
So selling to like you did a big deal with Disney.
Yeah.
And by the way, shut up. My mom's going to come on the show soon, and we're going to have a whole episode on Ecofiber.
That's going to be so great.
She crushed. This was her project.
It was her project.
She was the CEO of this company. Right?
Yeah, and she brought it right up. And it was her idea.
Yeah, they had wicked. I love it when a lot of you guys out there know about Ecofiber because I've done videos on it, and you guys always send me pictures and send me product. Like I have a collection of old Ecofiber because
I got a big box of the original too. It's real fun.
It's a real heavy weight because the way it was recycled, it like you had to get a heavier yarn, right?
That's exactly right. We couldn't recycle the fabric and the waste unless we made a big yarn. So all our T-shirts were heavy.
100% cotton, heavyweight.
Yeah.
Great hats made of like cotton twill, golf shirts, sweatshirts, just like really good quality basic stuff.
And it was all made in America. We did not go to China. We did not go to Vietnam. We did not go to South Korea.
But you wanted to.
I wanted to. And that was a big thing.
Dave wanted to take it offshore, obviously for price reasons.
That's right.
And Judy said, no, we shouldn't take it offshore.
And that's where, of course, my ADD got in. I didn't want to bend. I went back to my surplus company, and it was stupid.
Quick intermission to the show, everybody. If you're liking what you're hearing, if you're excited to keep listening, don't waste any more time. Go jump on the Patreon for your 7-day free trial. It's $5 after that.
That is $1.25 per episode. $1.25 for 2 hours of pure listening, joy, and education. So go jump on the Patreon, or you can join down below to the YouTube channel and listen right here on YouTube, or again on the Patreon, free 7-day trial. Also, guys, I never really talk about wholesale on here, but F as in Frank is a wholesale company as well as a retail company. We have stores, but we also do wholesale. We have a warehouse in Toronto. We can supply most of what you need in the vintage world. We don't really wholesale a ton of hype vintage, but we do wholesale all your regular retail essentials. We also are currently wholesaling the Yeezy Gap unreleased season. If you guys want unreleased Yeezy Gap in your store, all you got to do is hit us up. Hit me up on the DMs, Drew Heifetz, or hit Jesse up, Jesse Heifetz on Instagram. And we will sort you guys out with what you need. Maybe it's a fit for your business. So hit us up for wholesale.
And in reality, that company fell because you guys
weren't getting along.
And you guys were like going through a breakup.
Yeah, we had a breakup. Well, we've been together for 50 years. We got back together, of course, and thank God we have a wonderful family. And it was mostly my craziness.
So explain it. Like, how did that? Do you remember it?
How did it happen? Yeah, I wanted to go. That was when they were starting the Mexican Free Trade Zone. There's a 50 square mile Mexican Free Trade Zone between New Mexico and Mexico. And there were lots of guys moving there from North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and opening up because the labor was for nothing. You got Mexicans to work there, and there were no taxes from the U.S. or Canada. It was a trade-free zone, and I wanted to move our production there. And Judy said, no, we're doing great. We're going to keep it here. And I was an idiot. I should have just said fine. And we would have been retired in 6 months or a year. But
I don't know about that.
Well,
I wasn't doing that kind of money.
So I just said, okay, you run the company your way. I'm going to go back in the surplus business.
But you were probably you were like in sales mostly, right?
I was in sales.
Yeah. So Dave's a good salesman, everybody. Very good salesman. Because he's got no qualms about doing whatever it's going to take to make that sale.
It's true.
Whether it makes people happy or pisses them off, he's going to do what he's got to do to get the sale.
But sometimes it's not very honest, and I don't tell the truth. So
in what way?
Well, I'll tell him I'm going to retire. You won't be seeing me again. You better buy it, or I'll tell. I make up stories.
So this is a great sales tactic. Dave does shows. He goes to events, festivals, markets, whatever, right?
Right.
And you have a booth and you have a sign that says like today only. But the sign goes to every show. It's always today only. That's the deal.
Yeah.
Or like last chance going out of business, but it's like, no, you're going to be next week going out of business and the week after that going out of business.
True.
So
silly.
Sales tactics for you guys, create urgency.
That's always been my motto. You got to get them while they're there. Create urgency. And you know what? I admire my two boys more than you can imagine. You know why? Because I was a you or me person. And these guys are a you and me. They include everybody in the industry and try to help everybody. And it makes me very proud. For me, I wanted to bury all my competition.
Okay. This is a great... you said that a lot on the show, so thank you.
I know that.
I said that every episode. So let's talk. This is a good segue into like a debate we were having on the drive. So we were talking about like again, it goes back to like competition. It goes back to like friend or foe or like warrior versus like lover conversation, right?
Yeah.
And that's very vague, but it's this is a question for you guys, and I want you to answer this, what your thoughts are on this in the comments down below, okay? So do you believe like having a vintage store in a neighborhood full of vintage stores is better, or having a vintage store in a neighborhood with no other vintage stores around?
Good thinking. That's good.
What's good thinking?
Well, either or. I mean,
yeah, like this is, so I want your guys' opinions on this, right? Now, there's many different ways to look at all of this, and we'll discuss some of them. But yeah, so I want to know, would you rather a vintage store in a neighborhood full of vintage stores? So it's like, that's where you know to go for like vintage and shop a few stores, like say like a Melrose Ave, right? A Melrose Ave has like 10 vintage stores, right?
Easy.
People who want to go shop vintage go to Melrose. That Melrose is all fucked up now, but that's an example. Or would you want to have like a vintage store, say in a neighborhood like Rodeo Drive, where like there's no other vintage store, and you're in the mix with like a designer clothes or different kinds of stuff, you know, like.
It's a really good question, isn't it?
I think so.
I think it is. It's a really good question.
So
in my day, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, my thought is that, like, you know, sure, competition is a real thing, and there is competitors to what we do, and there's, you guys are all fucking competitors to what I do, and I'm out here talking to you, and we're talking about whatever. People who listen to this show are competitors technically, but you know, there was a period where my neighborhood in Vancouver started to get like really saturated with vintage. It's gone through like some iterations. Like it was always kind of vintage, and then a bunch of them closed, and then a bunch more opened up, and whatever. But I could go down the path of like, fuck, and be all butthurt and sad for myself and fucking have these feelings about it. Or I can adopt an attitude of like abundance, and that we're all helping each other and we're all bringing customers to the neighborhood that are going to benefit everybody.
Which I think you do. I mean, today we were talking about it, and there's a guy named Mintage who opened up a vintage mall about a block from Drew's store. Now, I would have thought, wow, that son of a gun, man. Why would he do that? But Drew said, he brings me lots of extra customers. It's wonderful, which is very positive attitude, and he's probably right.
I mean, at the end of the day, our sales, like, there hasn't been I mean, it's so fucking hard to tell because it's like COVID and blah, blah, blah. But like, we're doing great today, and we're on an upward trend currently, right? So I don't see how that like has negatively affected me if it ever has.
It's been positive. And you know what? The Rag Machine, which we own together, the three of us, we're not doing much different, and business is great. We are up at least 100%.
You know, and that says something about staying power. It's like we've been in those two stores for a long, long time.
12 years, is it?
People know you. People expect something. Like you can't just sit on that alone. You have to adapt. You have to upgrade. You have to like keep pushing forward and like working on it. But there is value in that too, because now you have like you could probably go to a random place in Vancouver and ask if they know F as in Frank. They're going to know F as in Frank. We've been around that much. We've done enough events. We've done enough advertising that most people in the city would know who we are after 15 fucking years of being there. And there's value in that. That's called goodwill. You build goodwill over like years of doing something.
You know, one of the biggest regrets I have, I do a lot of events. I have for the last 7 or 8 years. And I never thought about it, but I should be giving away coupons to the Rag Machine and F as in Frank. Because
I'm selling. Topic.
What?
This is another fun topic where we have very different opinions.
Well, I'm selling used Hawaiian shirts, and Drew has used Hawaiian shirts in his store. We have some used Hawaiian shirts at the Rag Machine, and people ask me, I don't have a store. They ask me, where can I get them after this? You know?
So I mean, I agree. Like that could translate to dollars for the store. It's wasteful and it costs money to do, right?
Handing out a coupon.
Yeah, it's a waste of paper.
Sometimes.
No. Technically, if you hand out a coupon, it's a waste of paper.
Yes, it is.
It's garbage paper that eventually goes in the trash. So it's
a
cup of coffee is a garbage cup eventually. Right. It's all garbage.
You're right.
But that's not to say it doesn't work. And I don't know. I guess it's another question for you guys. Do you think like a physical coupon is a viable way of marketing nowadays? Or like, is that so dated and people are just so much on their phones that like the only real viable way of marketing is digital? Let me know down below. You guys can weigh in on these topics. Like
I'm old school. I'm a coupon guy. He's you know,
we still,
Facebook and
if we do
Twitter.
an event, like I think it's valuable. We did flyers for this bag sale, right? Tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll let you know tomorrow. I mean, next episode.
But again,
we'll let
you got to ask people at the door. Like, did you see a flyer or did you see the ad?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're doing that. How'd you hear about us?
Yeah, which we did last time because you asked the same question because you don't remember because you're.
No, I did remember, and most of them knew about it through the store or through your advertising. Twitter,
yeah, from my memory, it was like 90% said we saw the video.
Yeah, a lot.
Like 99%.
Not 90.
I don't remember anyone who said I saw it from like a flyer, but that's just that. So
we didn't put out a lot of flyers last time. What's his name? Chris just put out 80 flyers this week.
So we'll find out tomorrow.
We'll find out tomorrow.
So we have a bag sale tomorrow. The famous fill a bag for $10.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm excited.
Dave loves the sales. I'm a little bit tired of them because I think it's so much work. But
we did it pretty quick today, though. Loading up.
Today was good, but the work comes tomorrow. And then, like we got to haul it into the hall tomorrow. But then if there's a lot left, packing it back in bags and hauling it out. I don't know if you remember. End of the day is the fucking worst. You're tired. It's been a long day. And then you got to pack it back in bags. Moving the bags is not so bad. It's packing it back in the bags. If you have like 4,000 pounds left or 2,000 pounds left, like it sucks.
But last time we gave it away, we brought it down to Hastings. The Hastings area is a area where there's a lot of homeless people, and we just gave it away. It was great. It was his idea, and felt good.
So, guys, that's Butchie.
Hi, Butchie.
And Sage is barking outside because I went and played tennis. My dad came to watch. We got home from getting ready for the bag sale. He wanted to go have a game of tennis. Come home, and Sage had shit all over the living room.
Jesus.
So we just had to clean up a bunch of shit in the living room.
But it worked. We cleaned it.
Yeah.
He had some carpet cleaner. We cleaned it.
It's nasty. Mega nasty.
Life is so crazy. All these little ups and downs.
So let's talk about that. This is not a timeline episode. This is just a random episode.
We're just rambling.
We're rambling. So if you could be your 18-year-old, if you could tell your 18-year-old self 3 things, what are you going to tell? What are you going to tell your 18-year-old self? Like you could today tell your 18-year-old self 3 things. What are you gonna tell him?
Wow. Well, you know what? I'd tell him what he tells me all the time, which is he wants to retire young. He's going to retire young, not wants to. He's going to retire young, and he's going to do all the things that he loves to do, the surfing and the snowboarding and the travel and the kids and whatever it is. And I'm 78, pushing 79, and there are some things I would have told my 18-year-old self, look, you can't buy time. So decide what you want to do with your life after this particular time. Now, and am I saying I didn't have a good time? I had a great time. I have a great family. I really love my wife. I love my kids, my grandkids. I love my friends. And I would have liked to gone to more music festivals. I would have liked to gone to do more art. I would have liked to spend more time in Palm Springs, California. I love the place there. So I would have planned that on my 18. I would have told my 18-year-old guy, think about some of the things you want to do and by when.
And live life.
And live life.
Live life.
Don't just work. Don't live your life around your job. Your job is there to create the life you want. And that may be included as part of it.
And not to say you shouldn't love what you do, but if you create your whole identity off of what you do, then you don't have like anything else. And there's this like theory that sometimes people retire and then die pretty quick. Because what happens is they've never built anything besides their work into their life. So they have nothing to live for beyond the work.
So true.
And then you're like, fuck, I didn't think about that. What am I going to do when I retire?
They get bored and they get just complacent.
Like, what's to live for? So think about that. And then when you think about that, it's like, well, I better keep those hobbies going. Like, why did you stop the hobbies? Why did you stop playing sports? Why did you stop those things? Because you had to work? Well, that's ridiculous. Like, work is only there to provide you a better life, not a worse life. And money, it's like work is not for money. Work is for the things that money can get you.
That's right.
Which is like experiences and stuff if you want stuff. But no, I don't want stuff. I want experiences and I want freedom. So you have to think about that, what the work is for and how that's going to translate into the freedom, the experiences, and I guess the stuff if that's what you want. But that's opinion.
That's a good opinion, though. I think we had some very good times.
I'll let my dog in. You keep talking.
During our growing up, we took lots of great vacations. We used to go up to a place called Trailside up in Northern Ontario, sometimes for 3 weeks, and just have a really, really good time. The whole family would go. And yeah, I mean, we often went down to Florida to visit my parents or to rent a place out in Sanibel Island. We had some good times, and I'm so happy that happened. And I want you to know you need to do that. All work and no play makes a very dull person. And you need hobbies. I always had hobbies. I love doing sculpture. I love gathering up crap from the beach and making sculptures. I did some acrylic painting. I had lots of hobbies. I was a ham radio operator in the old days before the computer came along.
And you did radio. You remember you did radio?
Oh, yeah. I had a radio program, a jazz radio program for smooth jazz on Salt Spring. I loved it. It was so much fun. It was only 3 hours a week, but it was absolutely awesome. And, yeah. And I used to do lots of events, just go out and do a fall fair or a music festival or a market on the main street of a town and just have fun with people. I had a good time.
So, well, first thing you told your 18-year-old self is live life. What's another thing you would tell your 18-year-old self? Another lesson you've learned in this almost 80 years, 78 years.
Oh, okay.
What's another lesson?
Another lesson. Invest wisely, because if you invest wisely, you can actually cut back sooner. I mean, if I would have invested in property when I started business, I could have been done when I was 40 or 45 years old. You know, you got to invest properly. And
you got to wait.
You got to wait. You have to have patience. But the other thing is consistency. Consistency. These guys have been doing this as partners for 15 years. I don't think I ever did anything for more than 3 years. Even with Larry, we had 9 or 10 clothing stores. After like 5 years, I went off on my own. Gave him the clothes stores.
What was it? What was it that made you? Because we've talked about this on our episodes. Like, you had so many businesses, so many separate business names, so many different businesses.
I don't know. I just had ADD and I got bored. And somewhere along the line, I figured I'd do something different that was better than what I was doing. And I rarely brought anything to completion. And perfect example, Scott Ravelson. He started the PA company, and 35 years, 40 years later, he's still doing it. Now, while he was doing it, he was buying real estate with his brother, mostly by himself. I think his brother bought 2 or 3 pieces. And then he decided to quit and just do real estate.
Okay, so besides monetary things, like what other funky life lessons, like
Have a
mental
family.
or
Have a family.
whatever?
Family's the best thing ever. Family is awesome. And take time for your family. Enjoy your family. And for the most part, I did that. I did. I took a few vacations. I got a little crazy sometimes, but for the most part, I had a great family. I have a great family. And I think everybody should have a great family. That's definitely family, very important.
Sometimes you don't get to choose. Sometimes you might have a shit family.
Yeah, well,
Like there could be people listening that are like, well, my parents are fucking dickheads.
oh, my dad was a dickhead for sure. My mom was a really lovely person, but my dad was a dickhead. He was a World War II veteran, and he just, I mean, he had,
I never knew his dad as a dickhead because he was just like a chill old grandpa at the time.
Yeah,
but like I guess my dad, he was a dick to my dad and his brother, right?
yeah, not very nice. Not very nice guy. I mean, he was very nice to all his friends and his business associates. My dad was the president of the New England Candy Confectioners. He was a candy salesman. He started off working for Planters Peanuts, and he was a New England rep for Planters Peanuts, and then he became the New England rep for James O. Welsh Candy Company, which made Sugar Babies, Sugar Daddies. When he worked for Planters Peanuts, I'll never forget, he used to do some grocery store events. He used to dress me up when I was 10 or 11 years old in Mr. Peanut costume. And I used to hand out peanuts to people in grocery stores. It was crazy. It was fun once in a while. He took me on a few trips around New England. I always came back with big bags of candy, all kinds of candy. Because in those days, the candy companies sold distributors, and my dad sold distributors, and the distributors sold all the grocery stores and the 5 and 10s and the gas stations, etc. So my dad sold the distributors. Yeah. But he wasn't great to the family. He loved Ed Sullivan, though. My dad would sit down on the couch. He had his chair. He had a big lounge chair. And every Sunday night he'd watch Ed Sullivan, and he'd smoke a big Dexter cigar in the house in the wintertime with the windows closed.
Ugh. It's pretty wild to think of that and how bars used to let everybody smoke and restaurants would be smoking and
he'd be smoking in the car.
On the plane?
We used to go at least 2-3 times a month to Lawrence, Mass. To visit my dad's parents. And on the way home for sure, and sometimes on the way up and on the way home, he'd be smoking his Dexter cigar with the windows closed. And me and my brother be in the back, my mom would be in the front. Could hardly breathe.
That's nasty.
Crazy. Yeah, the world is a funny, funny place.
So, what else do you want to talk about?
Well, I'd love to tell you a little about, the first boutique show I did was awesome. They had it at the McAlpin Hotel in New York City, and they gave every company a room at the McAlpin. So if you had a retail store, you would go up and down the floors of the McAlpin. And there'd be Levi had a room, and Lee, and, everybody. And we had a room, and it was really exciting. It was the first time I had ever done any wholesale.
Okay, guys, that is it for the free 45-minute version of the show. Me and Dave talk for about an hour and a half, so double your pleasure, double your fun. Go jump on the Patreon and listen to us ramble on for another 45 minutes. This was a good talk. We had no notes. We just kind of went into it, and lots more gems and juice in the full version on the Patreon. Or you can sub right here, right now. Click join down below, and get the full version on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back next week with new amazing guest. I don't know who yet, but you know it's going to be good. Vintage and Stuff with your host, Drew Heifetz, signing off.